So what about tantrums and whining with small children? That is always a hard thing. And they always seem to do it at the most inconvenient times too, don't they? When you're like at the store, or at a birthday party, places where you totally do not want it to happen. Well, that's just part of being little. They have to experiment with that kind of behavior and then decide, oh, that doesn't work. Well, let me tell you how I teach my children that it doesn't work. So what I'll do at a time when it's not the time that they're whining is I make sure that they understand the 4 basic skills: following instructions, accepting no answers and accepting criticism, accepting a consequence, and disagreeing appropriately. They can start learning those skills very young, especially following instructions and accepting a no answer and accepting a consequence, because that's pretty much it's close. The steps are pretty much the same as accepting a no answer. And they can learn those when they're like 2 years old. As long as they can say okay and that you know that they can understand what has happened, that they've needed to earn an extra chore or something like that. So before any time happens, I teach those things in a really fun way so that they learn them. And then I say, okay, now if you ever come to me when you're whining and you're sad, or if you're really, really upset and you're kicking and you're mad, then I'm going to look at you and I'm going to say this every time. I'm going to hold you by the arm and I'm going to say, and I hold really soft, I'm going to say, Porter, you're whining. And then I will walk you to the timeout and you can sit on the timeout until you're calm. And as soon as you're calm, then I will come in and I will high five and give a big hug, and then we'll talk about what you did and what you should have done, and then we'll practice. Okay, so this is how it's going to happen. Let's pretend I'm whining. So then I will go through a role play with my children. I'll say, I don't want to go to bed. Or whatever it is. And I start whining. And then they have to look at me and go, Mom, you're whining. And then they say, you're going to have to go to timeout until you're happy. And then we'll talk about it. And then I say, okay, so then they take me to timeout, and then I get calm, and then they come in and give me a high five and a big hug, and we practice it. And then I turn around and practice it with them. So then they pretend they're having a fit and whining, and then I take them there and we practice. Then I remind them, okay, if this ever happens again, even if we're at grandma's, even if we're anywhere else, there's always a timeout, a place where we can get calm, because we don't want to be with our friends if we're upset. So if you're ever whining about something, then I will just look at you and say, you're whining. And then we will go through that process. And we do what's called a little corrective teaching after their timeout time is done. I don't believe in using timeout for long periods of time. If the child is really going to be upset for 10 minutes, well, then they can stay there for 10 minutes until they calm down. But if they sit down and they're calm in about a minute, then sure, go in, give them a high five, hug, and talk about it. If they can get calmer faster, that shows more self-government, that they're learning, I can stop this. I can choose to be calm and be ready to talk. And I want to reward that. So that's what we do. And then when we're out places, we just follow through the same way. The key thing is, don't let any of the whinings go or any of the tantrums go. It's so tempting to be talking with a friend or doing something and you say, okay, they're whining right now, but, okay, whatever you want, okay. And then you just go back and you show them that it works. And then other times you're going to stick with it. All of a sudden, they're going to try to start playing games with you, and they'll be a lot more whiny. If they're whiny, stop what you're doing, look at them and say, you're whining, and just go through with it. So consistency is really important. But if you're consistent and you do the same thing every time, and they know what you're doing ahead of time, and they know the exact words you're going to even say, so there's no surprises, then they don't have anxiety, which is another thing that really increases tantrums and whining. And they know exactly what their job is, what they're supposed to do, and how it will all be made better.